I'm Julie Zenner along with Dennis Anderson, and here's what's coming up on Almanac North.
Well, after months of debate, the Duluth City Council has approved an Earned Sick and Safe Time ordinance. We'll find out what it means for local businesses and workers.
Republicans from around the state are gathering in Duluth this weekend to endorse U.S. Senate, gubernatorial, and other candidates for the fall election.
And we'll have the story of a Duluth man searching for his grandfather who was declared dead during World War II.
These stories and the business news up next on Almanac North. Hello and welcome to Almanac North. Thanks for watching. And Denny, I kind of feel like we've been on a roller coaster with the temperature extremes this week. It's up, it's down, it's all over the place.
I've learned if you live anywhere near the big lake, you keep a winter jacket at the ready.
Well, I told you already, I carried mine in. Actually, I wore it in tonight. So.
It'll warm up.
All right. Well, we do have some hot topics tonight, so let's get started.
All right. Thank you very much, Julie. Well, it's been a long road to passage, but this week the Duluth City Councilors approved an ordinance that requires local businesses to provide earned sick and safe time for workers. The ordinance evolved quite a bit since its first introduction before the council. Here to talk about the approved measure is Noah Hobbs, a Duluth at-large city councilman, and David Ross is the president and CEO of the Duluth Area Chamber of Commerce. Gentlemen, thanks to both of you for being here tonight. Councilor Noah, it was a 7-1 vote. Are you comfortable with the requirements that this version provides?
Yeah, I think that we went through different variations of it, and I think we landed at a place that allows for employers to be flexible enough in providing this benefit while still providing a floor for workers.
You changed your mind. What happened for you to support this?
I think having a policy that is flexible enough for employers and acknowledging that a lot of employers do provide this benefit while still having that floor that provides a basic floor for worker protection, and having a lot of different conversations with the business community. I think some are still certainly very unhappy with it, but I think we have a workable policy that isn't overly burdensome.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. David Ross, do you believe the final version was a good balance between business concerns and worker needs?
It's the very best that this city council would allow. Noah Hobbs has been a star within this initiative. One, because he's certainly interested in how employees are treated, but he was one of the minority voices that also had great concern for how this would impact employers and had some empathy for what it will entail for businesses to incorporate this new, unfunded local mandate into their operations and into their finances.
Mm-hmm. David, what is this going to mean for the cost of goods and services in Duluth? Can we see some hike?
That's a great question, and that was one of our concerns, is that was not articulated. It was never fully understood. And the idea was that the majority of the councilors said we will figure that out as we go forward. There is a January 1st, 2018 implementation date. And so for the next 18 months, we'll have the opportunity to work very hard to bring some definition to this, what it will mean financially to those small businesses in particular. This affects very much the hospitality industry that has a lot of seasonal employees and are really many local businesses just getting by, and so this is of grave concern to them.
Mm-hmm. And it goes into effect in 2020?
January 1st, 2020, and we fought hard to have that push to allow for more preparation time for the businesses. Mm-hmm. And thankfully that was something that Noah and others agreed to.
Mm-hmm. Councilor Hobbs, as you look at the final ordinance, why do you believe that this is a good thing for the community of Duluth?
Yeah, I think it shows that we value our workers. We came to a compromise with the business community on having a uniquely Duluth policy, not just a copy and paste from St. Paul, Minneapolis, which was a concern of mine going into this, but we have, being that we have such a seasonal economy, seasonal employees are exempt from this policy. Part-time and full-time employees, however, do fall under this. They accrue 1 hour of earned safe and sick time for every 50 hours worked, which allows for 40 hours through the entire year that they would have access to. And I think that everybody gets sick. It doesn't matter what type of employment that you have. So I think it is good in covering for that. But I do want to acknowledge that a lot of employers go above and beyond just this very minimum floor that we've set.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it the government's concern that a private company, should offer sick and safe time?
Yeah, I believe that the government should care for its citizens, and I think broaden those circles of opportunity. And if somebody does get sick and they have to miss a day, 2, 3 days of work, specifically for a low-income family, that's going to put them very far into poverty. It certainly isn't going to prevent somebody from or eliminate poverty, but it certainly will prevent somebody from getting behind on the rent, being able to take their kids to the doctor, and I think that is a cause that many businesses share. I think the government, in a broad sense, the economy's changed since the 1960s, 1970s. There's very few income earners in a house. You now have a mom and a dad going to work, and that's tough when you get kids that are sick to take care of that.
Mm-hmm. Are there restrictions on how this time can be used? Can employers say no if somebody asks to use some of the time that they have built up?
What are the challenges for employers in trying to staff organizations sometimes, organizations that are around the clock and 3 different shifts per day? But if someone chooses to be gone from work because of safe time, they don't feel comfortable in their particular environment, that's an issue that the employers can't really even inquire about. Well, what is it? What are you not feeling safe about? And is not only applies to just the immediate family like most conventional sick leave policies, but this now is to a much broader whomever I might be living with, or if I have a friend or a roommate that is in an unsafe position that I feel I need to be with her or with him. Very difficult for employers to staff around that kind of a challenge.
David, a 2-part question. Are seasonal employees covered and are part-time employees covered?
Originally, seasonal employees were included, and they were in the Minneapolis ordinance and in the St. Paul ordinance. And this is where Duluth has its own solution to some degree, in that in the end, with Noah's leadership and others, the majority vote was there, and then the others fell in line to have it be a 7-1. So oftentimes these votes look different in the end than what they actually were building up to it. But yes, we were able to have seasonal employees not included. So thus, Vista Fleets, who hires high school and college students on part-time basis, you don't have to go through all of this protocol for those folks that really staff up for the tourism season and then go down to a much lower staffing.
Mm-hmm. Councilor, will there be cost to the city in terms of oversight, or how do you envision oversight so the city ensures that businesses are complying?
Yeah, so we just hired a city clerk, and a large part of that will fall on that individual. It is estimated we may have to have a part-time person for part of the education. So for 2019, the city's focus will be doing outreach to the business community to say this is the policy, this is what you're going to need to have to be in compliance. And what that person, it may end up being a full-time position, but having part-time to ESST and the other part of that part-time position dedicated to other city clerk functions.
Mm-hmm.
This comes at a challenge here. The city is cutting back on its most important services, fire and police and safety. At the same time, they're going to be adding a discretionary expense. This was not mandated by anyone other than the Duluth City Council choosing to take this on. And we talked about municipalities and government taking this on. Universally, it's not. However, in this whole state of Minnesota, there are just now 3 local governments that have chosen on their own volition to take this on: Minneapolis, St. Paul, and now Duluth.
It's still 18 months before this is implemented. Being politics what it is, can there still be some changes? Could this come up again? Could this not end up being what we see it today?
I believe there's always the opportunity for changes. I think we landed at a pretty good place. There may be some tweaks, and certainly after the implementation, if there's something that's not working, we could certainly make changes to it. We can change any ordinance that we have on the books, and so this is no different than that. I'd be hesitant too, given that we have a landing place so people can be educated, so there's not multiple different talking points going around on what this policy looks like.
Denny, that was a great question, and this won't come from our own city council. The change might come from the state of Minnesota in a new legislative session as early as this spring coming up and saying with new electees that this is not going to be allowed at a local level. Or there's a federal initiative as well underway that will not allow local municipalities to take this on themselves and make these decisions.
Now, as the head of the Duluth Chamber, you talk to a lot of other chambers across the state. Any other community looking at this, what are they saying to you?
Not that I'm aware of, and the reason this is a statewide initiative. It was a special interest group. It expanded from Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the next landing place was Duluth because they recognize this city council is very receptive to this kind of message and to this kind of initiative. Beyond that, I don't think they're going to be going to Rochester or to St. Cloud or to Moorhead or any other regional center because it simply won't happen. Their city councils are much more conservative than is Duluth.
Mm-hmm. This was a pretty contentious debate. 5 years from now, how do you think people will look back at it?
Hopefully a little less contentious. I think time kind of heals all wounds, and I think we did come to a good landing spot. And so I think we had a challenging conversation that we came to somewhat of an agreement.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have to run. Thank you both. Noah Hobbs, David Ross. Appreciate your conversation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a big weekend for party politics in Minnesota. Democrats from around the state are gathering in Rochester this weekend for the DFL state convention, and Republicans are meeting in Duluth tonight and tomorrow for their state convention. Tonight, GOP delegates are making endorsements in 2 United States Senate races, and on Saturday, Republicans will endorse their ticket for the state's constitutional officers, including a candidate for governor. Well, joining us now is Representative Dale Lueck, a Republican House member from Aitkin, and you made your way away from the busy convention center to come up and visit with us tonight. We appreciate it.
Sure did.
Appreciate it.
We're blessed in Aitkin County. Our group had plenty of alternates, so let somebody else sit in a chair there and cast a vote. Did enough vote casting during the last session and the session before.
So how critical is this midterm election for Republicans this time around?
Well, I think every election is critical, really, for the voters of Minnesota more than anything. And obviously, we're going to have a new governor. Hard to predict, which party that individual is going to come from. But more important, regardless of which party, you're going to have agency heads change, commissioners from a variety of state agencies, and that'll change things. Obviously, if the DFL is successful in electing their candidate, whoever that's going to be, and we don't know that at this point, you may see something generally similar to what Governor Dayton's administration has done. On the other hand, if the Republican Party is successful in electing a candidate, you'll certainly see some major changes.
Is President Trump going to be mentioned prominently at the convention this weekend, or
already has been?
Or are you going to shy away from him?
Already has been.
How so?
Well, I say just as we left the convention and changed out from being voting delegates to let the alternates come in, we heard two different speeches, and yeah, he was mentioned in both cases.
Quite favorably.
He is our president. In case most people haven't noticed, has been our president now for almost 2 years, and despite the friction and the tension that appears to be out there, he has done some huge important things, and especially for this part of Minnesota. Because I'll tell you what, 2 years ago, mining was headed for a disaster in this part of the Midwest. and the likelihood of copper nickel mining moving ahead, all kinds of things were literally balled up and tied up and slammed down, and that was when he came in. Those things changed, and they have changed rapidly. So he left a real impression in at least the folks north of St. Cloud, as they say, that make their living in timber and mining, because he has changed the landscape. His new agency heads back there in Washington, D.C. have made a difference. You can see it, Department of Interior, and how they've handled leases, mineral leases, as well as the U.S. Forest Service. That's a big deal. It's really a big deal for this. If you're a resource-based economy like we are, you can only do so much with tourism. We love tourism, but believe me, the two huge stools in our economy are timber, mining, manufacturing, and then obviously tourism has got it's another important stool, but it is not the major provider for most of the families out there, particularly for those really good, moderate to high income, long-term career jobs.
I've seen some signs on social media today that there's an RFL caucus, a
Sure
Republican Farmer Labor. You're a farmer.
You bet.
Is the Republican Party moving in a direction that will appeal to farmers and the labor unions?
Well, you've heard of the war on agriculture. Mm-hmm. Well, you know who's attributed to being the chief warrior on agriculture? Governor Dayton is. That's just an honest fact. That's what his administration has been credited with. The buffer law, things that some of his agencies have been doing, particularly Bowser, Board of Soil and Water. Got to watch out for the acronyms.
I don't want you to get too far afield here.
Get in the wheels.
But we need to get back into
that is huge. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what. I sat in the room and I watched our steel workers and our 49ers and our iron workers, pipe fitters plead with the governor. Not the governor. He wouldn't show up and didn't show up to talk with people from right here, the Rams and the range people. 60 people in the room, and they were there to plead their case on the sulfite standard, which I carried the bill twice and has been vetoed twice.
Let's talk about the endorsement. Let's talk about the endorsement process tonight. Two U.S. Senate candidates. Mm-hmm. Is it a surprise going in, or a question going in, or what do you think is going to happen? I'm just guessing now, but I know I personally know Representative Jim Newberger, and I will be surprised if he isn't endorsed. And I don't know Senator Housley as well. I've met her a couple times. She actually helped campaign for me, as did Jim over the past couple of years. So. I would be surprised if they're not easily endorsed, because
former Governor Tim Pawlenty wants his old job back, but he's not going to be at the convention this weekend. How does the Republican Party lean toward Governor Pawlenty? Look like a favorable man? Would you like to see him back in there as governor?
Yeah, that's not up to me. That's up to the voters of Minnesota. And
what do you think they're going to say? What do you think the party's going to say?
Well, I suspect that we'll endorse somebody tomorrow, and obviously there's three, kind of. Can
Pawlenty be endorsed even though he's not there?
Oh no. And what happened there is that process starts, real early, and obviously he didn't announce that he was even going to run until barely a month ago. Mm-hmm. And the candidates that are vying for the endorsement, they announced back last year, and they were, been around to all the local party units. But, well, let me ask you this question. How did Governor Dayton show up?
Well, we do have.
Was he endorsed? No, he wasn't. He went straight to the primary, and so that's just,
see what happens.
Governor Pawlenty has at least got as good a chance as Governor Dayton did. He didn't go through the endorsement process, and been here for 8 years.
We do have some insights from the Republican Party chair on the endorsement process and the importance of that. If we could run that tape.
In the Republican Party of Minnesota, we don't typically have candidates that bypass the endorsement process. If you go back and look at the modern history of our party, there is only one time in modern history when an unendorsed candidate has beat an endorsed candidate in the primary. It doesn't happen that often in our party. It's different on the Minnesota DFL side, but on our side, the endorsement actually means a lot. It carries a lot of weight, and these candidates are coming up and trying to win all these delegates, and these delegates and activists are the ones that go out and do the work for candidates, and they're the likely universe of primary voters.
So the convention really is kind of the launch of the political season. Do you think it's going to set a positive, negative tone? What do you anticipate?
Oh, when I left the convention, really positive. Everybody's after 4 years of anything, everybody's interested in a change, and with statewide elections, obviously, particularly for St. Paul, we're talking about a new governor. New Secretary of State, new auditor, that type of thing. So everybody's enthused about that. Obviously, our state Senate won't change because they're not up for election, but as us representatives, we're up every 2 years whether we need it or not.
All right. Well, Representative Dale Lueck, your time's up now.
Oh,
So
there you go.
thank you so much for coming.
Appreciate it
Really
very much.
enjoyed
Appreciate
it. Yeah.
Well, it's time now for the business headlines from the editors at Business North. Sears at Miller Hill Mall and Kmart in West Duluth both will close. Sears Holdings announced on Thursday. The news came one day after the retailer announced a $424 million first quarter loss. The Duluth stores are among 48 Sears and 15 Kmarts to close nationwide. Workers can apply for open positions at other Sears-owned stores, but most across the region have already closed. Earlier this year, Bon-Ton announced it was closing Yonkers stores in Superior and Duluth and Herberger's in Virginia.
4 area companies have filed an involuntary Chapter 7 bankruptcy petition against ERP Iron Ore of Grand Rapids. ERP purchased Magnetation at a bankruptcy auction in 2016. The petitioners include Minnesota Power, Glacier Park Iron Ore Properties, and 2 others. The filing against ERP may also endanger a related company. Court documents indicate the assets of ERP were to be used as collateral in the SR Steel acquisition by Chippewa Capital. It's possible that a forced bankruptcy of ERP would create a cross default with Chippewa.
Essentia Health's Board of Directors has formally approved additional planning, financing, and construction for Vision Northland, a major project to transform Essentia's Duluth campus. Essentia will invest approximately $675 million to replace existing buildings and another $125 million on related infrastructure and financing. A new St. Mary's Medical Center, a clinic building, and an outpatient surgery center will be constructed. It's the largest private investment in Duluth history, according to Essentia's Chief Executive, David Herman. The project is expected to serve as a catalyst for further development. For more on these and other stories, visit businessnorth.com.
Call now if you have a comment on our show. Dial 218-788-2849 to leave a message, or send an email to almanacnorth@wdse.org. And you can visit the WDSE website for updates on our program schedule, news about your favorite PBS shows, and upcoming events here at the station. And this week, people around the country gathered to remember our nation's fallen veterans on Memorial Day. Tonight, we have the first part of a story about a man's effort to find his grandfather who was killed near the end of World War II. Here's part 1 of Finding Loren.
My name is Hans Ronka, and this is my story. Loren Hintz was my grandfather on my mother's side. He grew up in northeastern Iowa during the Depression on a small farm. They were tenant farmers.
At the advent of World War II, Loren became a fighter pilot. Even though at 27 years of age, he was a little older than most, and married.
He was married over more than a year before he deployed overseas, during which time he and my grandmother, Gert, had a young girl, had a baby girl, my mom, Gretchen. And then by the time he left, my grandma was pregnant with their second child, who actually wasn't even born when his father was killed. Loren was killed very late in the war. My grandmother actually received the telegram that he was missing in action on VE Day, the day that victory in Europe was declared. A few months after the war in June, an Army detail and a Graves registration detail went to the village where Loren had been listed as last seen, and the Army investigated the location. Indeed, they came across what they determined to be a crash site, but they concluded that the pilot had been entirely cremated. However, they developed enough of a story to basically tell my grandmother that they believed Loren had been killed. So while his, as they said at the time, his mortal remains were never recovered, eventually a cross bearing his name was erected in an American cemetery outside of Florence.
Find out more on aircorpsaviation.com/finding Loren.
And we'll have part 2 of the story next week on Almanac North, and I'm looking forward to that, Denny.
The end of the story is very important to hear, and I think the folks will really get something out of it.
All right, again, that's next week. For Denny and the crew here at WDSE, I'm Julie Zenner. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time on Almanac North.